and the last time was July
Yeah,
of
sure.
2016.
Been a while.
Yeah. It's
Glad
been a while.
glad to come out.
Yeah, I appreciate you
Glad to be
doing
here.
that. Lots to talk about. I usually save the technical part of what I talk about with Brian, the detail stuff, because Brian's well versed in all that. And Mike, I'm thinking you can handle some of the details too.
I'm more than glad to talk about anything you want to talk about. I do.
Good.
In the community, when people stop me at restaurants, they expect me to know the status of code enforcement violations.
Really?
Next door to, oh yeah, they do.
Oh,
And
wow.
you know, traffic, everything. So I either do know, or if I don't know, I get back to them.
Ah,
So
that's really
I'm
good.
glad to do it.
There's a small town mayor for you.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is cool. So we're gonna, my thought is we're gonna probably ramble on through an hour of different issues, talk about different things. I'd like to talk about how, the first thing I'd like to talk about really is that it's been 5 years now since the city became a city, and it's a big change from when you first got in to where we are today. So how does that feel? What's different from when you started? What's the biggest things you've learned, maybe, would be a good way to start?
From a personal point of view, you know, when I answer it
Yeah,
just as
sure.
Mike Mason, the guy who led the Yes campaign, you know, and I don't want to leave my wife out of that. You know, she was the campaign manager and I was a spokesperson.
That'd be nice.
There was a you know, an army of hundreds of people who were helping, but it's kind of like winning elections and governing for a politician.
Mhm.
You know, we won the campaign to become a city.
Right.
And then it's like the dog who chases cars, you catch the car, then it's be careful what you wish for.
Mhm.
Then you learn that everything you do and your whole way of relating to people has to change. I had an email distribution list of well over 1,000, 1,500 names
Mhm.
during the campaign, and I would respond to any email, no matter how, you know, whatever the topic was, and any phone call. And I had coffee with hundreds of people, you know, that were really curious about it. Now, I have to be careful about that. The city attorney admonishes me about responding to some emails. Certainly,
Mm.
don't post on, you know, next door. You know,
Mm.
very careful. You got to be, you know, because of people, you know, taking what you say and editing it and posting it, and you can't unring a bell. So, my ability to meet and communicate with people has been limited, and that's been the biggest personal disappointment for me. Now, I try to make myself very available. You know, I'll meet with anybody, and I'll talk to anybody. But the long rambling emails back and forth that I used to do, I can't.
Right.
But I have a lot of coffees with people. I try to speak a lot into the community,
Mhm.
you know, as often as I can. And as anybody will tell you, my phone number's out there. If you call me, I'll return your call.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can say that you haven't been out there over the last 5 years. Certainly, there's been controversy on some things, and there's always a core of people that never wanted the city. There was
Sure.
the no vote, no ballot, whatever it was called, and so there's always that. But I got to believe that. Do you see that? Well, I believe a certain way, but do you see more people happy with what the city's doing than less happy?
Very much so. I mean, people, I could give you a lot of anecdotal incidents. Most recently, a guy, I was having breakfast with someone, Magnolia Bakery, and I'm sitting there talking to this guy, and all of a sudden this guy, and I, as soon as he stood up, I thought, I know that gentleman. He opposed the formation of the city. And he comes at me, and he has a real frown on his face, and I thought, oh boy, he's about to let me know what we're doing wrong.
Uh-huh.
And I look up at him, and I said, yes, sir, can I help you? And he said, you're the mayor, aren't you? And I said, I am. And he said, well, I oppose the formation of this city. Pause for dramatic effect.
Uh-huh.
But I was wrong. You guys have been doing a great job, and my wife and I, you know, she told me, you need to go over and tell him that, you know, he's doing a good job and that you were wrong. And I looked over at her at the table, and she was smiling and nodding. I smiled and waved back at her, and he shook my hand. And that's typical. It happens at Publix, and it just happens at restaurants too. That people, by the very fact that you do things, people see that we're trying to do the best we can to fix those issues. If you go back to that time, 5, 6 years ago, about, you know, we used to say, the community's at the tipping point, and only a city can address those issues. You know, redevelopment issues, you know, traffic issues. You know, if you talk to the Gwinnett Chamber, they would tell you economic development, that the tech park, we badly needed to redevelop it, revitalize it. Jobs, the vacancy rate in Tech Park was climbing.
It was very high.
And those things have all been reversed and or addressed. Probably the only thing that is, I still haven't been able to do is Holcomb Bridge Road and out of Peachtree Corner Circle. Now, we've done a number of studies. We've done some things on Winters Chapel. We've done a lot of transportation intersection improvements on that side of town. But the one big catalyst that can turn it around and change it, we haven't been able to do. Not for lack of looking, and not for lack of ordinances that address issues, but it's going to take something like, well, let's use the town center as an example. That kind of fell in our lap. We had to act to buy that property, or it would be garden apartments across from the fort.
Yeah, the way it was zoned.
The way it was zoned,
Right.
and nobody dreamed that in our first year we'd have to address those. And then, you know, once you have it, you had to move thoughtfully, which isn't very fast, but thoughtfully, to do something with it. And so we're all excited about what's going to happen to it this year. It'll be completed, we hope. So we haven't been able to find that one big defining change the paradigm, if you will, thing on Holcomb Bridge out of Peachtree Corner Circle. Have a couple initiatives that I can't discuss. They're very confidential, but we're
I mean, I think there are prime properties there, either as tear downs or as, because there's not much vacant land, I don't think, on that side, right?
You know, I'll just say it, since it's just you and I and, you know.
And everyone else on
And everyone
Facebook.
else that's on Facebook. I made a mistake, and that was saying out loud that I wanted someone to buy one of the older apartment complexes and tear it down, and we would help them rebuild it. And we have a good market-based incentive package that developers have told us, hey, that's perfect incentive package. Here's the problem. The vacancy rate in those apartments is zero. I mean, they're full.
Yeah.
And they've been able to raise prices because we have done code enforcement sweeps extensively. So new sheriff in town, we're making sure that they, and there have been turnovers, and they invest a couple of $1 million, they spruce it up, they make it look better.
Yeah.
So where am I headed? The prices have gone up.
Yeah.
And
The
so
rentals.
the rental,
Yeah.
the cost of the property. So
That's
what
it.
someone could have gotten and turned over and made something different to change the paradigm, it's going to have to wait for the next business turn down, or find another alternative. And there are a couple in the commercial areas.
Not in the apartment areas.
It would be close by there. It would be close by there. And I can't tell you anymore. I'd have to tell you the whole joke. The whole joke about that. But yeah, there are things we're looking at there that, how could we make that work?
Okay.
You know, and then we do have the big plan, the multi-use trail, which is going to go around the inside. It goes, the piece that once we do it around there, and we go through the town center piece, and we go down to the Y, and then you go back, head south, through there. Once you circle around and reconnect down at where Engineering Drive crosses Tech Park there, that area, it will follow Crooked Creek down through that area. And if you look at that area, what would probably be in our best interest is to find something along there. The mayors of Dunwoody and Sandy Springs have both contacted us and said, we can't wait for you to finish your multi-use trail coming through there.
They want to connect.
Because they want to connect. They're going to be doing that. Sandy Springs is going to do that on Spalding. On the piece that's Sandy Springs, right where the low place, right before it goes up, where Spalding goes up to Winters Chapel. On the right, they're going to put a park in there.
Now, there's a bridge. Is that the side we're talking about? There's a bridge in Spalding Drive going towards Winters Chapel.
Exactly, and that bridge is the one that is going to be replaced when they widen Spalding between Winters Chapel and Holcomb Bridge Road.
Do you know when that's happening?
It is in. No, I don't. I should know. I presented it, but I usually have a PowerPoint that shows the date. But it's in the. I think the county's. It's one of those three-way things where you've got two cities and a county. It's Sandy Springs, Peachtree Corners, and Gwinnett County. because it's Gwinnett County Road.
Yeah, right.
And so, they're gonna widen it and move ahead with that.
That's good. I mean, that 2-lane bridge is just ridiculous
It
at
is.
this stage, and probably for the last 5 years, or 6 years. Is there one thing that you can point to that when people come to you, besides, let's say, the development of Technology Park, is there 1 or 2 things that people actually bring up to you and say, I'm glad the city formed because you're able to do this? Is there something like that
Their property values go up. It's not one thing, like, I really like the fact that you guys have done prototype prime. I've had that.
Mhm.
But typically, it's, I was at Kiko's. My wife and I go there periodically. We've gone there for 20 years. And this person comes up to me and he said, I just want you to know, you guys are doing a great job. My property values are going up. He gave me a big thumbs up. And we're going to retire and we're going to sell. And so we want you to hurry up and build something smaller because they want to downsize.
And they want to stay here in Peachtree.
But they want to stay here, which is the whole idea of pushing for the FISERV thing,
Right.
and which we hope works out. And then the other developments, for homes here are going to be, I think, going to be attractive to both millennials and baby boomers that are retiring. But it's that single thing. It's this sense of good times, property values. It's kind of like back when, I don't know, the 80s and the 90s here, when Tech Park was really booming and growing.
Yeah.
Paul Duke was still alive and still driving his business before Alzheimer's took him from that role. So I get a sense of that because there's a lot of construction going on, good construction, purposeful,
Right. Yeah.
things like that, transportation.
I mean, and I'm seeing it across the arc, if you will.
It's true.
I mean, Sandy Springs has a dozen cranes up in the air. And there's plenty of small cities that are doing that. Milton has even, I think, a crane or something else going up. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of development. So I mean, the city for sure has helped to a degree, I would think, and the economy certainly has changed also over the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think it. If you, and here I'm quoting statistics without a spreadsheet, and as an accountant I always go from spreadsheets. But for last year's State of the City address, it was like the 5 years before it became a city, the 5 years afterwards, and the growth in jobs, economic development, and investment in the community in the 5 years after we become a city was exponentially higher than the 5 years before. Now, if you think about it, 2012,
Yeah.
there was a recession before that.
That's right.
But if you go back and look at it year by year, it was not high before then, and it just went down further. So when you've got an area that's not preferential, and Peachtree Corners was on the decline, go ahead and say the word,
Yeah.
Before we became a city.
Yeah.
And so it just went, it would have been the last to recover from a recession, but by the city stepping in and doing things, we're going to address this. We're going to address that. Then you let people know someone's taking notice.
It's interesting. When I moved here in '95, the growth of real estate over the period up until 2008, 2007 was, I think it was like 3-4% a year in rate of value of homes. I think reaching as high as 5.6 or something, somewhere along that line. So it was fairly high.
Okay.
And then it dropped because of the recession. And I remember being on the County Planning Commission during part of that time, when just building was just going gangbusters.
Right.
People were converting 100 acres into,
Subdivisions.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Farmers becoming millionaires because they were just changing their zonings and selling to developers. It was just a heyday for development.
That's right. And a lot of that was done, and I have the enormous respect for the Gwinnett County Commission and our commissioner during that period of time. We're at that point that Peachtree Corners was always a little more urban than the rest of Gwinnett County.
Yeah.
I mean, we always were. I mean, you look at us, we were always the wealthiest area. Talked to Jose Perez, and he was on the Planning Commission with you.
Right.
And he used to constantly say, all the money's flowing out of Peachtree Corners and going over there. What do we get back? He didn't mean that literally, but
No, but that's what a lot of the cities thought too. Johns Creek, before it became a city, was the same thought.
oh yeah.
Sending money down south, Fulton County, using it in other neighborhoods.
And that is why, because of the strength of our business community and the fact that we're more urban, we have a bigger population, that we can run the city without a millage rate. Still successfully, and no intentions of doing it. No need to. Things are going well for us, Because we have the biggest population, we get the most SPOS. And most of our needs right now are SPOS related, transportation, buildings that are SPOSable, if you will.
And even like for example, the purchasing of Simpson Wood as a park. I mean, the county stepped in to do it, but the city put up $2 million, I think it was, at the time.
Yeah, it's one of those things where all credit to the county and Lynette Howard for doing that. I mean, she's the spearhead on that because she lives here too. But I was led to believe that it wouldn't happen if the ante didn't go a little higher, and the county, unfortunately, was limited in what they could.
Right.
They couldn't go any more than 14, and in order to make it.
But they put in the majority of the money. I mean,
it's their part.
Right. So if the county didn't step in to do that, I mean, the paltry $2 million that was put in, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's kind of like people were fussing at me. Why didn't we buy it?
We couldn't afford it.
We couldn't afford it.
Yeah, not without taking a bond. I don't even think you could have gotten a bond for that.
Well, we didn't have a credit history.
There you go.
And then I got fussed at about Fiserv. Why didn't we buy Fiserv? Well, same issue,
You can buy everything.
Yeah. We buy what we have to buy. We do what we have to do. Luckily, we're a city and we can do those things if we need to. We bought a little piece of property on the town center.
Right.
The little strip right there. And I have to admit, and this is bad taste, but I coveted that property in the biblical sense for a long time. I mean, to think about, we bought the front piece, but that was always private back there because the Lennar didn't own it, so it was always private. I thought to myself, we'll regret that. You can't control what your other neighbors are going to do.
That's right.
So it would be better if we just went ahead and bought it. Plus, if you think about the way the town center is going to develop with the town green there, if someone were to put in something much more, shall we say, urban, like an office tower, or apartments or something like that, that would change the environment, because it's going to be very nice. You want it to be, we're going to have a botanical garden on the other side, so it's going to be very relaxing for people, because this is not about right now. This is 20 years from now, 40 years from now. Our kids are going to grow up to enjoy this and evolve
Well,
into
and it's interesting because zoning, the way that works, right, we all know this, is that the 169 apartments that are going to go in, that were the Charlie Roberts property, that land abuts that, and it's contiguous to that.
It is.
Which meant that anyone that bought that land by right could sue if they were denied the same type of zone.
They could.
Right. So, I mean, buying it made sense. Now, buying it at that particular time as opposed to a few years earlier, but who had the foreknowledge?
I've been saying it from the beginning, but it is not that I'm a genius, that I saw it coming. We're kind of, to answer your question, is we're victims of our own success. The prices go up because of what's being put on the town center.
Yeah.
And those properties are going up. Did you want to buy it or not?
Yeah.
That's a market reality.
We have the property now. I'm trying to remember the last drive-by. Roberts has already started moving dirt, I guess.
He is still doing, I think he's done a little bit, to be honest with you. I don't know. I asked the other day and I haven't gotten an answer on where he is and what his plans are.
Do you know if he's filed and purchased the Indigo franchise? Has it been approved for that?
They offered him the Indigo franchise before this even came up.
Right.
There's a guy who did that work for International Hotel Group who owns the Indigo brand.
IHG.
And I knew him, and I called him. And he said, oh yeah, before I left IHG, that was the last one we did. So he's had it offered to them. Now, has he consummated it and gotten it done? I don't know.
Okay.
But I knew it wasn't going to be on their side. And that was one of those 95 or 96 conditions, is that it's an Indigo. It's what he said, it's what it's going to be, unless the council approves it not being an Indigo. Highly unlikely we'll change our minds.
And that was supposed to also be built almost contiguous, there's certain
Has to be,
conditions
right,
and
yeah.
stuff.
Oh, yeah, it's carefully
Yeah.
designed.
So now, we're moving a little further along, that the town center is gonna, I can't wait for the Cine Bistro and some of the restaurants.
Cine Bistro got sold, you heard that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
Did it really?
A company bought out. Cine Bistro was a local outfit. Only had a couple of theaters, I understand,
And they were high-end
They were
movie
very
grill
high-end
type things.
And someone bought them.
So how's that working now?
Well, the people that are gonna, they said, oh, sure, we'd love to be there. That's a perfect location for us. So
Right.
everybody's happy. I mean, they're
But are
locked
they
in.
still putting in the same type of Cine
Yes,
Bistro?
yes, it is.
High-end, and
Yeah,
not the
it's-
movie grill?
Oh, no, it's I can't remember the initials.
Okay.
It's not a Cine Bistro name, I forget.
It's a different name, but
It's a
the
different
same type
brand,
of.
but the same kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, everyone knows, I think, the movie grill, and it's not, it's okay, but it's not the same thing as Cine Bistro was in Brookhaven,
No,
so.
yeah.
All right.
Brookhaven's pretty high end.
Yeah, for sure. Any other changes there that you know of besides that? I didn't know about that one. Any of the restaurants changing
no.
out, or will?
Sometimes they do, but I can't remember anything that isn't posted up on the wall as you drive by. You know,
Right.
or Judy Putnam hadn't put on the website.
Right.
She periodically updates the list and
Okay.
stuff like that.
So now we're talking about an entertainment district.
Right.
That I spoke to Brian about this on our last call, last weekend. And that's gonna be, that got approved
Mhm.
without the,
Package store.
package store.
Right.
Right, and so it's gonna follow the same rules, he said, as every other package store in the city. Has to be, if something gets approved there, it would have to be a standalone building, and would have to get a special use permit, I think is the way it works now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what we did was just simply pulled out the package store. They wanted to put a Total Wine Concept.
Right.
Not Total Wine Concept,
Uh-huh.
Package store in there in the Earth Fair location, which, to be blunt, it's an economic development issue for me.
Mhm.
You know, it would seem to be, what's a package store got to do with the entertainment district?
Right.
You're right.
I'm glad you feel that way, because I was totally against that. I was like, that makes no sense to me.
It makes no sense.
To put that in there.
Yeah, except here's the problem. We don't want, I say this stuff and no matter who's listening, but, the goodwill, I have heard, I would say I,
Mhm.
instead of we, which means the city staff, and it becomes more official. I've heard that the Goodwill and the Dollar General are maybe leaving that shopping center where they are.
I heard the same thing.
Yeah.
Their leases would not be renewed, most likely.
Okay, good. If you heard it, then
I mean, that's what I
probably-
heard, too.
There's a
Yeah.
buzz out there, and I've
Yeah.
heard it more than once. But what's gonna go in the Earth Fair space is 23,000 square feet. It's gonna be a discount retailer. And they wanna do the whole piece. They don't wanna chop it up,
Mhm.
because that would cost money or make
Sure.
it ugly
Yeah.
for someone, so.
Yeah, there's not enough store frontage to be able to do that properly. It's deep.
You got it. You get it. So from our point of view, we got to be careful, because that is going to be, I mean, who knows how long that would be there. So for me, I was willing to kind of suspend my, I was a big proponent of the package store should be standalone.
Mhm.
And that I think we've got it modeled so that you can have no more than 5 or 6 in the city if you place them all perfectly.
Right, because they have to be 3,000 square feet.
Oh, yeah,
from each
exactly,
other
and
or
it's gotta be
something?
from each other, gotta be
Right.
from schools or
Right.
church, and those kinds of things. So if we were to make it fair, and, I think there was what is fair and that kind of stuff. So we were willing to move expeditiously, some of us were, in order to, just fill that space, simply for economic development reasons. I mean, what would you like to see there, Goodwill? I don't think so.
No.
And I think it would hurt a lot of the businesses surrounding there. So
Yeah.
we were willing to do that if it made sense, not for an individual person, but for a location, because that's a pretty prime location.
Now, you haven't heard of anyone, I mean, I heard at one point, I think it was West 57, if that's the right name. It was going to be, at least some people talked about wanting to put a concert venue type of place, small concert venue there.
A concert venue?
Yeah, a small one, like, I forget the name of it, that was up in Duluth, or
If
Johns
they-
Creek.
If
had
they are
one.
interested in doing it,
Would that be enough space?
Call the mayor. Yeah, I would be more than glad to help them. You know, anybody who's interested, you know, right
So let
now.
me ask you something else, then,
Sure.
because that just occurred to me now, because as we were talking about what we don't want there, is that, I remember when the adult store took over that building. I mean, that would never be able to be
No,
approved.
that's not in the district.
Right.
Yeah, we have our city attorney crafted a pretty good,
So it would never be an adult entertainment
No, it's not
location.
going to.
Okay. I just thought I'd throw that out.
No,
This is what
that's
I
good.
just did.
It's clear
Yeah.
that, to me, that's a concern, you know,
Yeah.
and that's why, the issue came up, was it was brought to us, you know, and we were kind of looking at it from an opportunistic point of view, as opposed to like let's go back and examine the package store ordinance, and how do we tinker with this and tinker with that. So right now, it's pretty clear, you know, how the council voted, you know,
Right.
and it's done, you know, and now we got to find something else to go there.
Right.
Or Earth Fair will do what's in their best interest,
Mhm.
which is fill the space.
Now, does the city, besides the mayor, does the city have anyone that goes out actively looking for businesses to come into?
I'm glad you said besides the mayor, because you're right.
No, I mean, the mayor does.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
don't
we
have an
have-
economic development director. We have
Yeah.
a lady who does kind of economic development coordination, Jennifer Howard. Brian Johnson is.
Brian,
I
well,
bring
sure,
Brian,
he's
I
being
bring
there.
Brian in on it, whatever, but I'm probably the guy who does more than anything, and because I've been here a long time, because a lot of people know me, because I retired 2 years ago, I have a lot more time to do it.
Sure.
You know, I know the chamber types, and they know me, and
Mhm.
so I get a lot of phone calls and people talk to me. But we don't have anybody who is prospecting. We put our economic development dollars into things like prototype prime, growing your own.
Yes.
But
Mhm.
but that's only part of it. You know, we give a annual. We work with Partnership Gwinnett, and you know, we're an investor in Partnership Gwinnett, like every other city is, and the county is,
Mhm.
and they do that kind of stuff for us. But when you start talking about, let's use Duluth as an example, or even Norcross. Look at how charming their downtowns are.
Mhm.
You think that happened by accident? You know,
Yeah.
that's
Took
right.
a long time,
It took a
actually.
long time.
There were a lot of people that did not want development in Norcross.
Oh, and look at Duluth. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
they've
that's it.
remade themselves a number of times.
Mhm.
And what they're doing is supported by their citizens and the council, and things are moving well. And they've defined themselves around a real entertainment district where it's got theaters and,
Right,
and a
yeah.
lot of restaurants, and it's fun stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the way, and they're what, eons ahead of us in
Mhm.
terms of age.
Mhm.
But I applaud everything they do, because that's what, they're showing you what the citizens want. And our citizens are no different.
Let me ask you something. Bringing that up makes sense. The Art Council,
Yeah.
that's been trying to plan things out. There's nothing lately going on with them that I understand. But, you know, part of the master plan that they were looking at was, where can we put an art center? Now, granted, this is 6 acres, is it 6 acres or 4.5? I mean, that would be terrific right off the town center.
Guilty, yeah, that's the mayor's favorite choice.
That
Is
is
put it
right.
right there, yeah.
Okay, what's the second favorite at this stage? Would it be Earth Fair?
Maybe, that would be close enough, because you've got to, remember,
Right.
for a theater, you got to have a roof.
That's right.
And you got a big parking lot, and it
Right.
does, and you're close enough to the town center, so
Mhm.
that would work. So, yeah, sure, that's second. Third would be, you've been around long enough, how about the Outback Shopping Center?
Yes, there's
Go-
another
go-
place,
Go
right?
to the big furniture store squarely in the middle.
Yeah,
There. You know,
Interesting.
that
Yeah.
would, now I told you everything. I remember I told you I have to kill
Right,
you.
right, right.
Well, there you go.
You're gonna have to die here.
Humor side,
Uh-huh.
that is something that I have brainstormed with the arts consultants, and that was the third level. I mean, they even suggested one on the Fiserv. Yeah, come on.
Right.
And
And-
that's not gonna happen.
No, at this stage, I'm sure it's not,
But
although
to
that
me-
could have been beautiful right on the river.
Yeah, Rays on the River, a restaurant,
Uh-huh.
and a kind of a, kind of where that plays, you know, that would have been something that I thought would have been very well attended, and something the city could have supported. To me, using an art center as a redevelopment tool
Mhm.
for the Holcomb Bridge, Outer Peachtree Corner Circle corridor redevelopment, sure, that's a great idea, because the problem is, when you have redevelopment, somebody's got to go first. It's the role of government, because
Yeah.
you're not going to get a private developer to do it.
Mhm.
And I'm a capitalist. I was a chief financial officer, CPA, MBA, all that stuff for years and years. I am an absolute capitalist. But I've learned that they wait until the price of the property is dirt low and is so run down,
Sure.
there's crime,
Yeah.
and it's bad.
Yeah.
We can't tolerate that.
No.
You know, so we would step in sooner than that and offer incentives for people to. So that's what cities do.
That's funny, because I was watching a documentary that just got released recently on Donald Trump, and it's a multi-episode. It's on Netflix, and I grew up in New York, and it just reminded me of New York during that time with A-Beam, and how the developers and how tax abatement actually was born in the city of New York because of what Trump did. And he essentially said the same thing. The city's at a low point. There's crime, there's trash. You can't even collect the trash. You laid off 3,000 police officers. That's only going to make crime worse.
That's right.
And property values dropped, and that's when he swooped in, got tax abatements, and he bought cheap, and he got 40-year tax abatement on top of that. So,
holy moly!
Yeah, $160 million over 40 years. He would never have to pay tax on that property. But no, I can see that it has to be government and private industry.
It has to be a partnership. Yeah, and we've done that pretty successfully. You know, everywhere we've worked.
And that's a big that particular. I like the Outback. I remember that was one of the pieces that they were talking about. So I mean, that's a big piece of property, though. And you have two out parcels on that right now.
Yeah, there's maybe three. There's a Kentucky Fried Chicken. There's a Glasses place, and
that's right, the Glasses place. I forgot about that. But that's a pretty big. And that also has a Fur Kids, and also has, I think, not a Goodwill, maybe something, a thrift shop of the sort, or dollar store.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. So I mean, could that be redeveloped as a multi-story, multi-building type of development,
well,
multi-use?
It could have before you started talking about it. Now, whoever owns it's going to run the price up. So
I doubt that.
Humor aside, again, that's the tricky thing about it. If you ask me, look at the Holcomb Bridge corridor redevelopment. We did a study, and that was the center point. You know, I mean, that was, if you do this is what it could look like, and it was exactly what you said. You know, now the other one was, as you cross, everybody knows Holcomb Bridge, Peachtree Corner Circle crosses, apartment complex on the right there. Used to be called Highland Corners, now it's Corners at Peachtree Corners, because it turned over. Right. That would be ideal, because that would be a good, it's 30 years old. Yeah. It's 1 and 2 story.
And does that go down a little bit, I think?
It goes down, and if somebody were to buy the one next to it, Crooked Creek's on the other side of that. Okay. So you could have a development, then you could have, a larger development. See, it's 25 acres the first one, 20, 25 the second. So it was 40 or 50 acres, as I recall.
How many apartments over there?
Oh my goodness. We had a study, and the study had a sample of 14 apartments, but that wasn't all of them.
14 apartment complexes. Right, but how many apartments in those two properties do you think?
The first one has 300. And it's mostly 3-bedroom. And we don't, City of Peachtree Corners, we don't allow anything but 1 and 2 bedrooms. I mean, that whole differentiator between millennial housing and family housing. I mean, if you will, that's the low-income housing, is for people who want to work here. Yeah. They want to live in an apartment. They may not be able to. And starter homes, I get a lot of people say, when are you going to build some affordable housing? And what they're talking, if you think of our price point, we're above $300,000 average house price, residential house price. And people come up to me and they say, why don't you, right. It's one of those, we're at that stage that if you look at the growth along, Peachtree Street, which became then Peachtree Industrial, which comes on out to Peachtree Parkway and Peachtree Industrial, out where we are. I mean, that whole thing, you think about the towns, it's Buckhead and Chamblee and Brookhaven and all this stuff. They all went through periods of development and then infill, and we're in that stage. I mean, you're going to start seeing people looking at little communities, little groups of contemporary homes, and pretty decent good neighborhoods. and they go, oh, there's a grouping of a dozen contemporaries that are dated, and they buy them. And so you start seeing those kinds of things.
I think if
But
I'm
that
not
does not
mistaken.
make for cheap house prices.
No, it doesn't. And
And therein lies, the issue for the city. If we're trying to make life cycle housing, Fiserv serves that. I mean, in 2030, 20% of the population will be over 65. And, if you want people to be able to live here, because they already know where the grocery store is, the dentist, the doctor, and this kind of stuff, and their grandkids are here, then you want them to stay. So we don't have anywhere near the housing we'll need to meet those needs for a life cycle city. That's why some millennial housing, so that kids that had a genuine opportunity to come back home after college, and there were jobs, and that's what we're trying to do with Prototype Prime, is have jobs and have opportunities so that people can start businesses or bring businesses here like Crawford and Company and those other companies that CGS that came here last year, the 500 level employees that came here just last year. And those are the kinds of things that you need housing for those, and young people want, apartments until they buy that first house.
Yeah.
So we needed to adjust the levels.
Have you thought about, coming from New York, from Brooklyn, condos? I mean, you see that more in the city. I mean,
If you
that's
talk-
property ownership.
we talked to Charlie Roberts about doing condos
Yeah,
instead
well,
of apartments.
he didn't want to do that.
Well, he couldn't. It was one of those, he couldn't get financing. If you
Oh.
look at the way after the turn down, if you look at the financing, you had to, and here, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody who's listening, and forgive me, I guess I should say instead of correct me. But what, as I recall, it was, if you're gonna do 100 condos, 50% of them had to be pre-sold, pre-committed prior to a bank loaning you the money to do the development.
Really?
Well, that's because after the turn down in 07, 08.
Oh, because of that.
It
Sure,
was a
okay.
debacle, and
Yeah.
they're only now starting to do condo financing in the city of Atlanta.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, and that's going to change over the few years. I
It
mean,
will.
right now the Republicans are trying to turn back the Volcker rule, which will allow more money to be freed up from reserves, and they'll be able to loan more money.
Right.
So hopefully we don't get into another real estate debacle.
Overheating the.
Yeah, because they're going to turn down, some of these rules are going to go away eventually that were put there for safety purposes. But
Glass-Steagall, exactly.
Yeah,
Back in the late
unfortunately,
90s.
yeah. Before we get further along, I just want to thank Prototype Prime for allowing us to use their podcast room. So they're a sponsor, and they are here in the city of Peachtree Corners. Mike Mason you're on the board, I think, no?
I'm on the board.
You're on the board. And
Sanjay Park.
is head of the
He's our
incubator, right?
executive consultant. He's our manager. He runs it for us.
The man runs everything here.
Yep.
12,000 square feet, that's actually expanding upstairs now.
We're going upstairs.
Yeah. There'll
We
be more
have
room.
Yeah, we'll have the whole building.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the Autonomous Vehicle Accelerator program. Probably you'll see us start to put those guys upstairs.
Right.
But there's also going to be a 48-desk classroom up there where we can do training classes. This is one of those, I don't think I'm going to queer the deal by saying it, but we're talking to Georgia Tech now about, we're very, this close, I'm the one who says it.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
What are they going to do?
Because Sanjay was like, I don't know if I can tell you this.
Yeah, well, I'm dangerous about that. Yeah. But I get excited. And
Georgia Tech, that would be phenomenal.
Well, it would be. It used to be
Coding,
called
right?
It used to be called continuing education.
Yeah.
Now it's called professional development.
Okay.
And it's not people that have that are doing undergraduate work. It's people they just want to, for example, change careers.
Mhm.
You've heard of coding boot camps?
Yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
do you remember last summer we started Prototype Prime in October of 16 with 2 teams and 3 employees. By July of the following year, we had, 13 teams and 32 employees and 6 openings. What were the 6 openings in? They were all for programs. They call them coders these days.
Yeah.
And so we thought, well, maybe we could let a for-profit coding school come in, and they call coding boot camps. It's like 16 weeks, and you you've got an undergraduate degree in
Mhm.
sociology and you're just tired of doing it. Well, you can go through this.
Learn PHP, all the other programs.
Whatever language they want,
Right.
they're teaching. And we thought that's a pretty good idea, and so we looked around. Turns out Georgia Tech
Mhm.
has a 92% placement rate. In other words,
Really?
oh yeah,
That's darn good.
that's Georgia Tech. It's like, but theirs is like a 14-week boot camp. So we're very close to, and I hope we're hoping to be able to, knock on wood or plastic, Formica, that we can offer that this fall. And it would be, I think that's going to be the first class. But then Georgia Tech said, well, what about big data analytics?
Yeah, sure.
That'd be the second class I
Yeah.
wanted to teach. And the idea is towards someone who wants to change careers
Uh-huh.
or someone who
Or
just
their career.
augment their career. Exactly. So that's there. Also, as I've said before countless times to people, I really think that one of the things this community needs is higher education,
Mhm.
undergraduate. So I've talked to Georgia Gwinnett,
Uh-huh.
and others.
Right.
We've talked to a number of schools about why don't you just teach classes here? But undergraduate,
Mhm.
freshman, sophomore. If you know about the Move When Ready program, do you know
Uh-huh.
about that?
Yeah, a little bit. Just explain it.
If you are a senior or a junior in
Uh-huh.
high school and it's just not challenging you, you can take advanced classes. You can take advanced
Is that
placement.
like a dual enrollment?
It's a dual enrollment.
Right.
Then you can start to college
Yeah.
at the same time, and you move, literally the term move when ready, and you've got Wesleyan right there, and you got Norcross High School, and they have a big presence.
Yeah.
I know Norcross High School was looking for teachers to teach move when ready in their building, so
Oh,
it
really?
would be something that we got classroom space.
Mhm.
Maybe somebody wants to use it, so we would encourage them.
With the STEM high school, Paul Duke moving in, opening up in August, I mean, we're gonna be dealing with kids that have to take internships during their senior year, have to, not have to, but have the ability to do dual enrollment, going out to Georgia Gwinnett College,
Mhm.
or maybe even taking a course here through Georgia Tech.
You got
That
it.
would be a credit class.
You're exactly right.
Right.
Those are the kinds of things. I'm fortunate. I was asked to be on the Citizens Advisory Board for that Paul Duke STEM school,
Uh-huh.
and that's exciting stuff. And
Yeah.
I know the principal, Jonathan Wetherington.
Mhm.
I think you've interviewed him.
He was on here on that Ed Hour. with, Alan.
And I'm telling you, that is something that is.
Can't wait.
I can't wait. And he's already said, hey, can we do interns in your autonomous vehicle?
Yes, why
And
not?
I said, yes. Would I ever say, do I say no to anybody? No, barely.
My son's going to be attending, so I have a personal interest in it.
Good for you.
So, and he chose to go there instead of Norcross, and lots of his friends are going to Norcross.
Norcross is a great school. Both my kids went to
For
Norcross.
sure, and two of my kids went there, and if it wasn't for the IB program,
Mhm.
as diligent and as hardworking as that was, plus the dual enrollment they did, it would have been, I mean, their first 2 years in college was way easier than other kids that did
Oh,
not
yeah.
go through an IB program.
Yeah, exactly.
That can't even write. I mean, some of these kids can't write, they go to school.
Yeah.
But, and the big data stuff that you're talking about is big, because even my journalist major son is taking data management.
Sure.
Because journalism is becoming more computer oriented with data algorithms and such, so it's a whole different world out there.
So we hope to be able to sign that LOI with Georgia Tech fairly soon. And we've been talking to them for quite some time. And they've indicated, and we verbally have all, and we've all hugged and kissed and shook hands and stuff. We just had, once you get
Signed
the
the
lawyers,
deal, right.
and once you get the lawyers and the
Right.
contract managers involved, everything slows down. But Sanjay's doing a great job with that, and Brian
Yeah.
Johnson and Sanjay are doing a great job for that.
This is awesome, and these guys don't just have this incubator doesn't just have like open workspace and 3D printers. I mean, it's a whole environment that people can just pick up things, go to class maybe, and eventually do other things here, and bump into other people sharing the same ambitions almost.
You are 100% correct, Rick. I mean, to me, and this is personal, but I know the council agrees. Paul Duke, God bless him, it was live, work, play.
Mhm.
We'd like to add live, work, play, learn.
Yeah.
That a community should provide those kinds of options. So for
Yeah.
me, undergraduate classes,
Mhm.
so that's right here in our community. and we'll figure out a way to do it. And then graduate programs or professional development, just learning in whatever category it is.
You know, and to meet the future needs. It's funny how, you know, we look at this and people say, well, why are we doing this? Well, look at 100 years ago. Look at when factories started coming in at the turn of last century, the 20s and 30s, and they realized they didn't have people educated enough to run some of these things. And so that's really when education for middle class, lower income started taking off, because you had to educate your workers in how to use the equipment. You know, it's the same thing here, no different. We're going into the future. We have Elon Musk blasting rocket ships every other week almost.
Oh, yeah.
Soon every week. And who's going to be part of that?
You know, I know you're a space guy, so you'll appreciate this little anecdotal story, but Trellis, you know, who's one of our startups here, it's run by two Georgia Tech aerospace engineers.
Okay.
And it is an agricultural application.
Yes,
they do moisture sensors for, you know, I mean, the biggest cost for farming is water. And, you know, monitoring it is something that nothing exists. So they came up with it. Well, wait a minute, why didn't they come from University of Georgia and they got agricultural backgrounds? Why are they aerospace engineers? And they told...
That's a simple answer, I think.
They said, well, you know, our approach is that we do wireless monitoring of, you know, moisture sensors.
Mm-hmm.
And we figured that eventually we could we could do it from outer space. After all, Elon Musk can put up a satellite for about 1.5 million.
Right.
So, you know, and the ease with which she, you know, was the gal, said that made us realize these young people think differently than we do.
Oh, yeah.
And I was proud that we have that in our city, and that they're doing things right here. You know, I saw them as I came in this morning, and I thought to myself, I'm glad they're here, because they're thinking about it and they're bringing that to Peachtree Corners.
Yeah.
And that eventually we'll be the beneficiaries of it. Our kids will be.
No, for sure. I mean, you cannot be around that and not succeed, I think.
Yeah.
You know, and if the kids see that, it's better seeing that than, you know, unfortunately, being in a bad neighborhood and hearing gunshots. I mean, it's better being exposed to this type of education, this type
Absolutely.
of ambition, because education is one thing, but lack of ambition, though, is something else. And God knows, in this place, there's lots of ambition. This is what incubators are about. Right?
Oh, yeah. Startups
and moving along and taking ideas. Rocket science, it does take a rocket scientist to do some things.
Yes.
And
they are, you know, and I'm glad to be part of it. You know, I mean, I play my role, and I'm just glad to be part of it, so that those that are younger and more ambitious, smarter, it's their turn, and they're doing their thing. I'm glad to be part of it.
So, you know, it's you get the good and the bad, right? Because so the good stuff is this, and then sometimes there's the bad stuff. And you know, we have to deal with that. So I need to ask a couple of questions on, like, for example, this last, I think it was 2 weeks ago, the pedestrian bridge came back.
Yeah.
Okay, so that came back out. It's, I think the first public hearing on it was back 2 years ago. I'm trying to remember.
We've been talking about it for 3 years or
3 years,
longer,
right.
3-4 years.
There's been multiple public hearings on the pedestrian bridge.
Public town hall meetings,
Right.
surveys, countless.
So countless. So 2 weeks ago, and by the way, it's in the overlay plan. It's in the 2000 was the 5-year plan.
Right, capital
It's a
plan.
capital plan. It's already, and people knew this. I think most people knew this. I knew that it was in there. Although looking at the last city agenda, you didn't know that was coming up for a vote. So I'm sure some people got upset with that and thinking, what? We're doing the pedestrian bridge again? But yes, we are, by the way. So the $1.5 million was approved, and it's going to be incremental over several years, I understand,
2
for
years,
Brian.
right.
Because that's the way the budgets work, and you can't put everything out all at once. So that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's only one of 2 bridges, actually, that's
Well, it needs
sort
to
of
happen.
noted in that.
You know, in January, Brian talked about it again, you know, because it's one of those things that if the reason we're doing it is pedestrian safety, and the town center is going to be done before the bridge is done. So there's going to be a period of time where people are going to be at higher risk than we want them to be for the events. I mean, the Peachtree Corners Festival, which is going to be in a couple of weeks, so everybody go. Let me encourage you all. It'll be another great time.
Second weekend.
Second weekend. And the concert, Friday night's going to be great. But they wanted to be there the following year. Now, that's 10 to 15,000 people over 3 days, Friday
That's a
night
lot
and
of
Saturday.
people.
Now, tell me, where are they going to park? How are they going to fill in the
Right,
blanks?
right.
And it's one of those things where getting them across that river of traffic, 141, it was a no-brainer that we needed a way to do that. So pedestrian. So we did engineering studies. We did comparisons of tunnels versus, all kinds of things, and it all came back that we went back and we looked at we did a lot of listening, and we looked at the designs, and we
Now, the design in this one is a lot different than the ones originally shown.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. The first, we did 5 designs, and the one that was the most loved was, remember the Twin Spires?
Yes.
Okay, that was the most loved according to the
Was that the
survey.
most loved?
What was the
Really?
one that was the most hated?
The one that we're putting in now?
The Twin Spires.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, I'm seriously. If you think about it, it was
It was. It had
simultaneously
lots
the
of-
most loved and the
yeah.
most hated. And as a result, you have to mark it off the list.
Yeah.
It was.
Well,
very-
I remember showing that to my then 12-year-old son. And I said, what do you think? I showed him on my iPhone as we were parked at the red light and looking north and saying, that's where it's going to go. And he says to me, Dad, that looks so out of proportion to the street that it's going to go on.
Yeah, the
And
pictures.
It just was.
It
yeah.
was. It
was a love-hate relationship.
It was right. The idea of what the new design is going to look like is a little bit of homage to Jones Bridge, the one that crossed Chattahoochee down there
Yes.
off East Jones Bridge. It's since fallen in the water, but it's one of those that it looks similar to. It's designed
Really?
based on that.
Okay.
And so color
Interesting.
and the look, and it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, it is going to be done in a way that is more cost effective. And so we needed to do it, and we needed to do it as close after the development of the town center as we can, so we can keep people safe crossing.
And I think that budget was way lower. The original budget's looking at 10 million maybe, but this budget is like 4 million for the bridge. or
Yeah,
3
we never
million.
got a price for the first one. It was
Those
yeah,
were
that 10
numbers
million.
being thrown out.
Yeah, you got to be careful about reading and believing. But the number that it is now, which is the only relevant thing, is around $4 million.
Right, which seems reasonable for that type of bridge. I've looked online prior to this for several months and looking at other cities our size and looking at their master plans, and they were about 3 to 4 million.
Sure.
4 million actually was about the average
Right.
of that. So all right, so that's happening. I just had people, I'm sure, they wanted to know where that was coming from again.
It is the most frequently asked question.
Yes.
No matter where I go, people ask, when are you going to build it? And it was one of those things that there were vocal people who were against it.
Mhm.
But by far and away, the people who talked to me, they said, don't listen to them. We need it. We recognize the fact that it's just not safe to cross.
The problem is when you look at social media and you look at Nextdoor, because that's the big social media for communities, and there's always a certain amount of people that will be on there saying things. It's always the same people. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, by the way. I'm just saying it's always, you get these comments, and it's easy to put a comment. I mean, Roseanne knows that. It's easy to put a comment out there,
Right.
and then it's like, oh my goodness, I shouldn't do that.
Right.
But there are people that they'll just throw out a comment because maybe they didn't like the city. There's certainly people that don't want a city.
Right.
In fact, I've even heard comments of people saying, how can we get a vote to rescind the city? Can we do a recall vote on people that are already officers in the city? So you get that discussion, which is not constructive discussion.
Yeah.
And doesn't help anyone. If you don't like what's going on, run for an office seat.
Right.
Take over the city council and run it your way.
Right.
And that's the way democracy works, right? I mean, that's just makes sense to me.
Exactly.
So, but I think, I think the city overall has done a great job. I'm not saying that because you're right in front of me. I've always said that. I mean, I disagree with some things, and that's fine. I disagree with the package store in the entertainment district because I understand the rationale. So thank God that's not in the overlay still.
Sure.
So because I just don't see
It will
but-
work out fine.
Yeah.
I think the
Mhm.
council entertained it. As I said, it was an economic decision.
Got that.
And now well, we'll just have to figure something else out.
And something will, if you're diligent, I think if city government is diligent on things, and you hold people to the fire, you can condition things, you can, if they come in for a special use permit, that's a great opportunity to say, hold up, let's see what this really looks like, what can we do here?
And as I was told by a number of people, after we bought the original property across from the Forum,
Yeah.
and then we put the $2 million in the deal, in support of the county's efforts, that if we had, but for the city, Simpsonwood would be a subdivision.
Yes, it would be.
They would have cut down a lot of trees. It would be a subdivision today. But for the city, there would be a bunch of garden apartments across from the Forum, and nothing we could have done about it.
No,
So,
not, you're right. Not
so,
one.
so we did the right thing then. There have been other times when we wanted to do something, but we chose not to. This is a good example of that. And that's why you have cities.
Right.
And that's why each person's voice matters.
No, I prefer it this way than the county seat in Lawrenceville deciding what should happen over here. It was okay.
Oh, you were part of the. Better than anybody.
And there was, some people don't like it, but there was district courtesy going on. So if they knew that we wanted something here or not here, the rest of the council, planning commission would recommend a certain way, and then the city and the commissioners would go that way probably. But having more local control makes sense to me.
Right.
We live here, why not have that? And especially if it's not going to cost us any more than it was costing us before.
Right. It's actually a little less.
Yes, and there's more.
We have more control.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Yeah. By the way, Rita, I think it's Rita Dame, she says, hello, Mayor Mike Macy, you do such a great job for Peachtree Corners.
Thank you, Rita.
So we're at the close of the hour practically. We're going to be putting this podcast, this Facebook Live, is going to be a podcast tonight, so it'll be available on iTunes, iHeartRadio, a few other places you can find podcasts. So feel free to download it, share it with your friends, and certainly share this, and I'll have it on our website at peachtreecornerslife.com for those people that are not on Facebook that still would like to see this video. So we'll have that out there. Anything you want to say before we close out?
Thanks for inviting me, and anytime you want me to come back, I'll be more than glad to. And there's a lot of stuff we're hoping to announce toward the end of the summer.
Okay.
Yeah, so, let's talk about something there, and then, although you get Brian regularly, he'll tell you about it. It's one of those things. But I'm glad to come out, and, I'm happy, with what's going on in the city. I'm glad he's here. The council, I will say one last thing.
Sure.
The other night, the community got a chance to see the council in what's called sausage making. Now, you understand that term.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
For those of you who don't know, if you see the legislature down at the Gold Dome in Atlanta, during a period of time, they're working on a bill, they call it sausage making because it's not attractive. I mean, it's wheeling and dealing and all this kind of stuff. So much the Attorney General has forbidden staff attorneys from observing it because they don't
Oh,
want
really?
to. Oh, yeah. I've talked to staff attorneys and they say, yeah, we can't go over. The Attorney General does not want us to see what actually the intent and the politicking that went behind a certain provision. But our council, if you look at it, a lot of the surrounding cities have had, like Brookhaven, I think they've had, 3 mayors?
Yes.
And they've turned over a good number of their councilmen.
Yeah.
We've only had one councilman who left voluntarily to run for a higher office, and same mayor, and we've all been here. And it's that ability to work together, because we don't always agree, as you can see from the other night, but we always work toward agreement. Because there's only 7 people that took an oath to do what's in the best interest of the community. Yeah. And I am fortunate to be one of, they take it seriously and so do I. But it's a good thing that I'm very proud of the council, happy to be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, those council meetings go late. I think when they were talking about the entertainment district, they went on for 2.5 hours or something. One of those.
Yeah.
So.
I think I got home after midnight. It was, a long night, very long night.
And you guys don't get paid well to do this, so, and I know that from experience.
Regardless of the rumors on next door.
Yes, no, that's funny how people think all sorts of things. But the future is good.
Yep.
And there's lots of things coming. So I look forward to hearing more about that. And hopefully, we'll be able to share that with Brian or yourself
Sure.
in the next month or two.
Okay.
Want to say thank you again to Prototype Prime for lending us their podcast studio, a great place. Anyone that wants to come out here and speak to Sanjay, whether you have a business or you need, basically it's startups with technology and hardware startups. But if you need to rent the 3D printers, it's
Oh, sure.
doable, right?
It is.
And if you want to even use the podcast studio, I think they rent that out also.
Sure.
This is what I do. So, and we do this every once in a while, at least twice a month on here. So next month we're going to have Brian back. I think it's the 4th Tuesday of the month. It's after the city council meeting, and we'll do the Ed Hour is what we're planning on in June. So we're still working on that and the topic for that. And I'm planning on a 3rd podcast show because I'm crazy and I don't make a living doing this. This is more of I don't golf, so this is what I do. So I'm planning on a 3rd type of podcast, and we'll see how that goes. So like our Facebook page and follow me on Instagram, Peachtree Corners Life, and find out when the next show is and what we're doing. Thank you, Facebook, and thank you to my podcast listeners.